And thanks a lot to our friend and colleague Matt Vogel for joining us for this. We're very excited for the launch of the Swift Kit featuring Azure IoT. Let's see. Can you advance to the next one there? Here's our panel today. As Steve said, please throw questions into the Q&A. I'll be tracking those, and we should have plenty of time at the end to get to the Q&A. In terms of today's run of show, here's our agenda. We'll give a quick reminder on Rigado and the role we play here in commercial spaces. And then we're going to hand it over to Matthew to talk about digital twins and how that's bringing smart spaces and digitalization to the kinds of especially safe workplace use cases that we're showing off with the Swift Kit. And then Steve, I think you're going to do a demo, right?
Yeah, we're going to do a demo. It's going to be pretty exciting. Looking forward to it. And one quick agenda adder, we've actually got a third case study we're going to talk about. I'll unveil that later on.
Oh, wow. Bonus special guest.
Bonus case study.
All
yes.
Right. Thanks, Steve. All right, with that, let's jump in. So in case you're not familiar with Rigado, here's literally 2 slides on us and what we do. We provide edge device networks for commercial spaces. So that means we're deploying sensors and gateways into places like offices and retail stores, warehouses, supply chain. And a lot of our work, as you would expect recently, has been focused on safe workplaces and companies with return to work efforts. And if you build that out, Steve, what that means practically is that our gateways, like you see here in the middle, are connecting all kinds of different sensors and devices, things like occupancy and safety signage and air quality or condition monitoring, and even asset tracking tags to the clouds that need them. So most often, our gateway is gathering the sensor data, pre-processing it, and then pushing it up to a cloud platform like Azure. And then our customers and partners are building enterprise applications on top of that data feed. And we might also be integrating with things like mobile apps or people counting systems so we can provide one view of what's going on with the space and with the stuff in the space. And then finally on the next slide, what that means in terms of safe workplace monitoring solutions. Really a lot of the technology that we were using prior to COVID has now found different roles and expanded roles with a workplace more focused on safety. So things like the presence sensors and safety signage, the people counting systems, and even buttons that staff or cleaning teams can use to let folks know that a space has been cleaned and is available to use. So we'll see some of these in action with the Swift Kit, but this is really sort of the recipe, if you will, that we've been bringing to these safe workplace solutions. And now to provide a bit more context, I'm going to hand it over to you, Matt.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Vogel. I'm a program manager in our Azure IoT Smart Places and Energy team. So thanks, guys, for having me here. I've been in Azure IoT now for a little more than 3 years, and I think the entire time working with Rigado as a very close partner in the Smart Places domain. And so for us at Microsoft, we think of smart places well beyond the traditional view of just a smart office building or traditional commercial real estate. We kind of quickly realized that smart places or spaces really span across a number of industries. Each of them has their own flavor of buildings. So in real estate and commercial buildings, obviously you have typical office buildings, but you quickly span out to other industries, like in healthcare, a building could be a hospital or a pharmacy. In retail, you have a store, a warehouse, and so on. And so our job from the Microsoft perspective is to make sure that we're providing the right ingredients and the right tools to help empower solutions that could span across these industries, as well as go very deep where people need to bring their own domain expertise. If we go to the next slide here, one of the key forces driving this digital transformation across these industries is the notion of digital twins. Digital twins is not a new concept per se. It's been around for several decades now. It was actually started by NASA for a lot of the space station work. But the central idea behind it is that digital twins allow you to, as we say here, fuse the physical and digital worlds together. Lets you create digital models of your physical environment And if we build this out, what we like to talk about are the relationships between things, places, and people, or people, places, devices. As you build up from the left to the right, what we see is you start with just collecting data from devices, which helps you at the most basic level think about remote monitoring, fault detection, and building to see if things are too hot or too cold, eventually getting to predictive maintenance. In the middle, you start understanding how those devices relate to a space. So it's not enough to know if a motion sensor is telling you, true or false if it sees motion. You actually probably want to know about that motion sensor because you want to know if a room is occupied or not. So now you're taking it one abstraction level forward to say, you understand that this motion sensor is attached to the space, which gives that data much more semantic meaning. Lastly, now you could actually start bridging from the occupancy analytics and other things you do around space to then how does that impact the people? How do you help people be more productive? How do you give them a more personalized and contextual experience? All empowered by that one holistic digital twin, taking data from any number of sources. Rigado has been a key player across the board in helping enable the data collection and the connectivity to empower those devices and sensors to tell you more about your physical spaces. And as I mentioned, digital twins, I think lots of people have very different definitions of digital twins. So I want to kind of show you Microsoft's perspective on it, as well as what our role has been and how Rigado then built upon that. And so for us, a complete digital twin, or what you might hear me call a holistic digital twin solution, is something that spans across each of these pillars that you see on this slide. It starts with IoT data or other live data sources. Then we get into the structure, and with structure, we talk about two different concepts. One is ontologies, or your domain expertise, your models, your vernacular about how you describe the entities in your space or in your industry, as well as the topology, the actual live instance. So if you think about ontology is how you describe the metadata about a conference room and its capacity and its temperature and so on. The topology would actually instantiate conference room 123 specifically, which is located on floor 4 within building 40. And so that's where you start bringing that to life with real live data in the frame of that model that you establish in your ontology. The geometry becomes important to help you visualize that data. So that structure is really kind of more of a graph underneath. It's more of a computer science side of things. But when you get to your end users wants some sort of visualization. And so in a traditional office building, or especially across a number of smart places, typically that'll take the form of a map, whether that's an outdoor map of your physical world or an indoor map of your floor plan, even bleeding into 3D, augmented reality, mixed reality, and all sorts of new ways to visualize things. Once you have all that data flowing together, we get to the behavior pillar. So creating that live execution environment, understanding how all of these factors, all this data is impacting each other in real time. And then the fifth pillar around time actually then extends it in two directions. One is the history. And so you want to look back to understand the history of the data in your domain, let's say the temperature of a room over time or the occupancy of a room over time, as well as the history of your data structure itself. So have you redefined certain rooms? Do some rooms maybe have a flex wall that could change it from 2 small rooms to 1 bigger room? It's important to know how that data relates in the context of your structure as well. And then lastly, you also need connections to other sources of data and other line of business applications. So those could be dashboards, it could be work order management, it could be a number of other endpoints that you want that data to connect to. If we build out this slide, we'll show you Microsoft's role kind of across the board is we are a platform company. We do not actually build a holistic digital twin solution ourselves. We rely on partners like Rigado, as well as customers to determine how they need a finished solution for their domain. So across the board here, what you see are various icons that we bring to bear as almost pantries, ingredients in our pantry. So we have things like IoT Hub and IoT Edge on the left. You see the Azure Digital Twins product itself is what we focus on with structure, all the way to Azure Maps, Stream Analytics, and so on that you see across the board here. And where we rely on partners is to stitch those together into a finished product that customers can end up using. And so what you'll see kind of throughout the rest of the presentation from Steve is how Rigado is building upon these and actually some other concepts from Azure IoT to help empower customers to actually bring to bear finished solutions for smarter places, safe workplace environments, connected stores. Rigado's done an amazing job of feeding in that data, providing the connectivity, and really helping stitch together those finished solutions with end customers in partnership. So, Steve, I'll hand it over to you.
Great. Thanks for that overview, Matt, and for the kind words about our work together. And I'm going to now hopefully stitch together what Kevin talked about at the onset, which is what Rigado brings for edge device networks and how we can provide the glue into this IoT and all the way through business data world. And the way that we're going to talk about that today is with our integration with Azure IoT and our new Swift Kit. And if you are familiar with Rigado, you've probably heard in the past, we've done kits before. We launched the Presto kit back in the spring, and it was our first way of doing this kind of out-of-the-box plug-and-play experience. We've built on top of that with the Swift Kit. It's very similar in terms of the experience. It's a no-code approach for solution builders to get something up and running quick in a proof of concept or a pilot. It's ready out of the box to work with Azure IoT Central, Azure IoT Hub, and all those other layers in the stack that Matt discussed. We've positioned it for safe workplaces, and we're going to demo some safe workplace use cases, but it can also be used for a lot of other types of environments. In fact, the case studies we're going to talk about, one of them is in retail. We see some in housing. So there's all sorts of different uses for it. And really the focus is to quickly get up and running with sensor devices and alert buttons and digital displays in a way that you can go and start to immediately prove value to end users and customers that are actually going to be consuming that data and improving that experience. So let's talk more about the kit. And the first thing I want to do is kind of talk about where we were with the Presto kit and where the Swift Kit goes. So we started with Presto, which is really quick. I need something up and running in a couple of days. Just give me any sensor you got. Let me see some data. We still do that. But if you are ready to accelerate to something more scaled, perhaps you have multiple sites you want to use. Perhaps you've got more sensor types you want to combine into some workflows. This is where the Swift Kit comes into play. So we're going to walk through that, what some of those options are. But the nice thing is you can actually customize it yourself. So you can, when you order the kit, you can say, how many sites do you have? How many sensors do you need? And you can also add to it. So you might start with one site and then say, hey, you know what? This is working great. Now we need to see it in this other location, or you want to install it in our other headquarters building. The Swift Kit allows you to do that. And I'm going to walk through that in the demo too. We've got a lot of sensor options. I put the main ones up here. So when you order a Swift Kit and you want to see some data coming into Azure, you want to build dashboards, you want to build alerts, we've got a lot of different ones to pick from, depending on what type of data you want, what kind of form factor you like, what kind of budget you have. Maybe you want to start small, get a proof of value going, and then layer on top of it. But you see everything from temperature conditions monitoring, we've got air quality monitors, alerts and displays, occupancy and door sensors, some asset tracking beacons and tags. A lot of these you've probably seen before on our website, or you've seen them in the Presto kit, but we're constantly adding to these. And so we like to say, if you need something that you don't see here, let us know. We'll either find it if it's in the portfolio of partners that we work with, but we can also work with any standard BLE device and even Wi-Fi and Ethernet devices as well. So we get that question a lot. So how are these devices connected? Most of them are Bluetooth, but we also support other protocols as well. So reach out to us so we can talk about it. But when you go to the Swift Kit order page, you're going to see a whole lot of options here for you to choose from to get that pilot up and running. So I'm going to get into the demo here. And one thing I wanted to tee up were some of these recipes, because in the past, we've typically provided kits and sensors and gateway combinations that you can build a dashboard around, maybe build a simple alert. But we're starting to get more sophisticated with the Swift Kit and with what Azure can do behind IoT Hub and IoT Central to enable these devices to work in concert to create a real end-to-end solution. So as an example, you can use the Swift Kit to take an occupancy sensor. So I've got one in my hand here that is monitoring my desk presence, and that can update the display to say if somebody is sitting in that desk or if it's available. One demo I'm going to do in a little bit is with a button push to indicate when a room was last cleaned. This is around the whole concept of safe workplaces and cleaning management and maintenance for COVID regulations and building regulations around maintenance for that. So that's another workflow that you don't have to write any code to actually get up and running with the Swift Kit. It's great. The other one we have here as an example is the door sensor. We've added a door sensor to our catalog. You can have a door sensor indicate if space is occupied or not, or send alerts on a door being open too long, that kind of thing. And then another recipe is demonstrating how air quality can be monitored, thresholded, send alerts northbound, track it through analytics. So we're going to get a couple of these in the demo, but I wanted to just kind of lay these out as examples. And there's certainly a lot more. We're seeing all kinds of creativity from our partners that either have used the Presto kit in this way or already taken a Swift kit and deployed it with some of these advanced recipes. So to summarize, the Swift kit is something that you as a solution provider, solution builder, whatever you term yourself, can take, and within a matter of days, when you've ordered it, you get it, bring it up using our easy to install wizard, can put together some of these recipes, get out to your customer, show them the value that you can bring with these connected devices and these edge networks, and build on that towards a scaled production environment that's using the same devices, the same gateway, the same sensors, the same cloud application. So we're going to switch over to a demo. So let me flip my sharing to my browser.
And while you're doing that, Steve, we had a question come in that I can address quickly. Sure. Someone was asking if this solution would work for a large construction site that was a combination of both finished buildings and new construction. And so the short answer is yes. But I think part of the reason the answer is yes is that really everything you see here are peel and stick, plug and play sensors. So they're designed for new construction as well as brownfield or retrofits. And we actually have a number of customers who use the sensors and gateways in construction and active job sites because they are so easy to put up and then also bring down and move to another job site. So great question, and thanks for asking.
Yeah, and as I go through the demo and I'm holding up different types of sensors and showing screens, you'll hopefully recognize that they're not vertically purposed, meaning you can use the same kit, the same sensor in a retail environment, a safe workplace, smart office environment, or in a construction site. So depending on what your requirements are for the form factor, we're really kind of vertical agnostic there. We've built some recipes with those in mind, but we see the same devices used in all those different areas. So if you recall in the past, we've done this demonstration of setting up the kit. We just recorded the entire setup process. It's in our knowledge base. So if you're already at the point where you've got a kit or you're going to get a kit, there's plenty of ways in which you can learn how to get it on board. But we've really maintained the simplicity of how you can create an IoT Central application with a kit. It's really, you get an email, you click a few buttons. We actually drive you through the process of setting up an IoT Central application. I'm going to do a free one here just to show you how quickly this thing provisions. I'm really impressed with how Matt and the team have developed this capability of basically instantiating in a whole visualization dashboard in IoT Central without really having to do any development work. Now we'll go through, we'll paste in the ID scope keys, and within a few minutes, normally we'll start to see devices coming on board. I'm going to save the time of doing all that because what's more interesting for Swift is to get into some of these recipes. But suffice to say, this onboarding takes just a few minutes, and you'll see quickly a list of devices here like I have in my network here. So I've actually got this live running on one of our Cascade gateways. So this is what the kit comes with. It's our LTE-enabled Cascade 500W. You'll see I've got it powered on. It's got a green light. You can use Ethernet, but you don't have to. We include LTE service in this for 90 days so that you can test it out, and you can use multiple gateways if you want as well. So all these sensors that I have running here in my house are actually connected to this Cascade gateway. They show up automatically here in my device list in IoT Central once I onboard the kit. So there's no searching for MAC addresses on devices. There's no installing things, or, you know, again, you don't have to get into any JSON formatting or any code. They just appear here, and you'll see all these different device templates we have. We've got asset tags, we've got door sensors, occupancy sensors, people counters, buttons, and depending on what you actually order with your kit, they'll just show up here, and you can start building out dashboards with them using this simple editor. So I've got a couple here built. So I didn't want to make this too formal, but I'll take you on a quick tour of what I've got here. So I've sort of got an overview dashboard here that shows my people counter. It shows my desk occupancy sensor. I've got, for instance, a door status here. We've got this new door sensor. It's kind of like what you would see in your home with a home alarm system. So when I open the door sensor, we should be able to see that. I didn't even have to refresh because it does it on its own. It flipped to 1. So now it's saying, okay, this thing is 1. You heard a little chime there. It's because I have a rule set up to alert me when the door is open. If I go ahead and put that back next to it, it should go back to 0 in just a few seconds. So this is a very, very simple example, right, of getting a status update from a device that says, oh, the door was open, now it's back to 0, it was closed. And, you know, Matt earlier said, hey, you know, it's one thing to say true or false, but what we really care about is that door occupied or not? And so this is where you as a solution builder using Swift can start to add your value, right? Do you present a pretty up version of this dashboard for your customer to start utilizing? Do you use the data exports to put it into a nice Power BI or other application that they can see? Do you start feeding that into other apps and alerts that they can use? So we've hopefully done the hard part of getting this peel and stick, you know, plug and play door sensor to you to get the 1 or the 0, and now you get to go and actually build a solution around that. So going on, I've got more on the occupancy sensor. You can see a heat map. As an example, I've got this one right here. Occupancy is pretty dead in the middle of the night, but as I got up and started getting to work here, you can see motion counts start picking up. So you get to start seeing heat maps here. If you want more precise counts, we have our APS 90E, our high-end stereoscopic people counting camera. Really accurate, great for if you need precise counts, zone monitoring, social distancing. Would love to get into that more. We actually did a separate webinar on occupancy and people counting with that device. So I'd invite you to check out that recording if you want. Going down, we get into some conditions monitoring, got office air quality, CO2, temperature, humidity. And again, what we're showing you here is live real-time data extraction from the device into the cloud, and then you as the solution provider or you know, whoever is building that application gets to go and customize this and take that data where you want to go and create a real valuable solution around it. You can do that here in IoT Central. For instance, I've created sort of this safe workplaces dashboard where you see occupancy, you see people counts, you see air quality. And you can also take that other places in the form of data exports to, you know, a MySQL database. You can send it into an analytics engine if you want. But this hopefully gets the process started for you without really having to do much work at all. Now, I want to now step into some of the advanced things you can do with the data, even natively here in IoT Central. I've created some rules, and this is where we're going to start getting into recipes. So rules are sort of if this, then that scenarios. We already showed the one where I opened the door and you heard a beep because it sends me a text message. I created another one here with the flick button. This is our handy little peel and stick button that can be programmed to do really any number of things. It's a simple button push. And in this case here, what I'm doing is when the button gets pressed, I send a text alert. So I have this tied into an Azure monitor group, which is really easy to do. And whenever one of these buttons in my household is pushed, my kids love to do it to get my attention. Sometimes we play around with these things. I'll get a little beep on my phone and a little text message. I've also created, and this is kind of new, I also created something in Power Automate, which is a workflow that you can actually go and send information back into IoT Central based on that condition. So this is kind of a neat one. What this does is when the button gets pushed, I actually have Power Automate run a command to go back into my display here and indicate when the button was pushed. And I say that's when this room was last cleaned. So if you've seen some of our case studies, use case we're going to get into, this is a very popular return to work, safe workplaces use case is how do I have the cleaning staff press a button here, and when they press the button, we want to get an alert that the button was pushed, and we also want to have the screen update to say when that button was pushed, indicating when it was last cleaned. So this is a very interesting use, and you can actually see I pushed the button, it's running there. So we should start to see that flicker and update in a minute. But this is a very interesting use of the IoT Central workflows, button pushes, doors opening, sending a rule out to another system, executing a command back through IoT Central, and updating the device. And the neat thing
Steve, that would seem to open up a lot of possibilities for automation, which I know has been coming up more and more. That seems like a really powerful piece.
It is. This is really where you get into automation, and you can start to see how also other data sets can come in and work. And sorry for the ding. There's my button push coming in, and we'll see the screen update.
Steve, I have to ask, do you get a ding every time your kids go anywhere? Is that really?
Yeah, sometimes I just
Beretta family monitoring system.
Sometimes I have to disable that rule just to get a little peace and quiet. Well, the interesting thing is you can combine it with other data sets too, right? It might not just be, okay, is this button pushed or is this door opened? It's what time of day was it? What were the conditions? How heavily trafficked was that area? What's the people count? And it can even come from other systems as well. So I think there's a ton of potential around this automation scheme. And by the way, a lot of people are probably asking, well, do I have to use IoT Central for all this? Can I use IoT Hub? The answer is yes. In fact, a lot of people take the Swift Kit, and I'm just watching my screen update to the last clean message there. A lot of people will take the Swift Kit, maybe they start with IoT Central, they migrate to Hub or vice versa. So we have a ton of flexibility there. The key thing is that these device templates that we've built that make it all plug and play in terms of the device data coming out of it. I thought another cool thing to show before we get into the case studies is the ability to do some analytics here, even natively with the device data. So I've got, for instance, and this really is handy with things like the occupancy sensor or the conditions monitoring. Air quality is becoming really top of mind for a lot of folks in the smart building space. So just taking like the CO2 monitor, which I actually have running here. I've got it on my big board of sensors. We did this kind of for a demonstration at a recent virtual show. And you can see I've pinned up a few different sensors, temperature, humidity. And this guy here is the MX1102A from our partners at Onset. It's doing live CO2 and temp and humidity. So you can actually use that as kind of an indicator of airflow, air quality, and that's feeding live into this application through my gateway. And so I can actually just plot CO2, and it's so easy to go in here and say, okay, let's plot it over the last 7 days, save, and you can see that in my basement here where I'm sitting, CO2 is pretty low, although if I have the door closed and I'm here for a while, it can pop up. But it's just a neat way to go and start showing that. And when we get into some of the use cases, a lot of people, what they'll see is the minute they install their kit, they find something out that dramatically improves something. Like, oh my gosh, we couldn't believe the refrigerator was working this way. So you'll get like an immediate benefit out of there, while at the same time setting up for long-term gains and efficiency on operations, etc. So I think I've hit a lot of the key demo areas that I wanted to touch on. We didn't get into all the data exports. There's some cool stuff you can do. We've pinned up some Power BI dashboards in the past. You can send this to more and more places now. I find Matt and the team are finding new ways to integrate natively IoT Central into other systems. So that's going to be something that I think just builds and builds. And as far as our work is concerned, you're going to see us continue to add devices, add device templates, so that when you install your kit, you might start with a set, but as we add new devices, you'll be able to add those over time as well. So again, feel free to ask any questions, and anyone that's already had a Rigado kit will tell you that we're always happy to jump on, talk through some scenarios. If there's a use case you're looking for, or a recipe you want to build but you're not sure how, we'll try to help out. Sometimes we even bring Microsoft in to team up on that, and we'll get you started on your way. So I'm going to switch back to the slides, and Kevin, let me know if there's any other questions you want to handle while I do that. If not, we'll jump into some case studies and wrap up.
We got a good question in about kind of looking past the pilot. How do companies usually take what they've tested out with the kit and then move it into production on multiple locations? Steve, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so one thing I glossed over when I was doing the wizard was there's an easy way to simply add more gateways to your app. So you can return to the app and say, oh, I got 3 new gateways. I want to add those. And then you can put those in different sites. And depending on which sensor is near which gateway, you'll get an indicator there, and it'll just kind of, you can organically grow it that way. The other option that we see people doing is they might use their Swift Kit to use it in their office or kind of a pilot site, but then work with us to build out kind of a framework for how they're going to do it across 1,000 sites if it's a large, say, retail chain, or if it's an office with 30 buildings or 30 floors. So you can keep the Swift Kit running as sort of your sandbox for designing new use cases, coming back and testing things, and start up a whole nother area where you're maybe using IoT Hub, or you're doing something different than what you were using the kit for. So it's there's a few different ways to do what we call graduating to production, and that's where Rigado's solution team can come in and provide some assistance there. And again, we try to make that as seamless as possible, and most of the time you're using the same devices and device templates. Another case study, so this is the one that I didn't put on the agenda, but I wanted to add it because it's been a really exciting one for us, was our partners at Asset Fusion. They were really one of our first kits that went from a Presto kit and sort of transitioned to a Swift kit by adding more gateways, adding more sensors. This is in a very large chain that's based in the UK that does coffee and quick serve. And they built a pilot project really quickly using our kit. And that was the example I gave earlier, where as soon as they had the kit online, they started to see issues in the refrigerator, and their store managers were like, wow, we didn't know this. This is great. This just saved us a ton of money. Their operations team across all the stores really got a lot of benefit from that. And they're doing what we call that graduation to production right now. They're looking at scaling that up. They went to a few sites, and we're hopefully in 2021 going to see them do more. I don't want to put them on the spot. I see a few of our friends from Asset Fusion in the participant window, so I'll just say a friendly hello. Thanks for all your support and for joining the webinar. But it's been great to go on that journey with them in this case study. And then finally, another really neat one is Origin Housing. They've been doing safety and occupancy for commercial housing developments. So the soccer stadium there, that's Watford Soccer Stadium in the UK. That little building that's attached to it, Watson Court, is a housing development that they manage. They manage a bunch of them throughout the area. And they really wanted to retrofit it with asset tracking, condition monitoring, occupancy. And they used our kit to do that. They've since expanded to multiple sites. And they're actually solving a different problem, which is tracking vacancies, late payments. A lot of times they don't really understand how long a place has been occupied or empty because of the way that these housing projects work in the UK. So just having basic understanding of that has demonstrated a ton of savings, on top of offering safety and comfort for their tenants. So they took, again, this asset tracker I have in my hand, this little guy, they've stuck it on their fire extinguishers. So they always know where they are, or if one of them has been moved when it shouldn't have. They've also placed the temperature, humidity, occupancy sensors throughout, and they're in the process of building out some nice visualizations in Power BI for their project as well. They also have their own application that they're working with. So it's kind of neat. You don't have to put all your data into one place. You can send it to dashboards for reporting, and then you can also send it to mobile applications for tenant experience. And so that's what Origin Housing is doing right now. And again, I think I saw some of them in the participant panel. So hello to you all at Origin, and thanks for being a partner of ours. So as you can see here, we titled this presentation around safe workplaces because that's obviously very top of mind for everybody right now. But a lot of different ways you can employ the Swift Kit, and we see it being used across these different verticals, and we're going to continue to come out with some of these recipes that you can use to get that off the ground. So if you want to get started, you can go to our website. There's a lot of information on the Swift Kit. You can order one there, customize your sensor options, tell us what you want. We'll get it out to you really quickly, and then you can set up in a few minutes and get rolling. You can start easy with IoT Central if you just want to plug and play dashboards. If you have your own application or your own destination for that data that you want to display it in and you want to use IoT Hub, that's great too. So either way, you can contact us at rigado.com and we'll get you started.
That's great. Thanks, Steve. Nice demo.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's get some questions going.
Yeah, Matt and I have been typing away here in the chat in the Q&A.
Okay, great.
So let me surface some of these to the group. So first was, is there a cost for the monthly Azure subscription? And can you talk a little bit about that, Matt?
Sure. Yeah, so I'll handle the Azure side of it, and I know Rigado has its own pricing structure as well, but for anything deployed into Azure, a unique part of what Rigado does is that it's deploying those resources or helping you deploy those resources into your own Azure subscriptions. That way you can own the entire solution end to end. And as part of deploying the solution into your Azure environment, that means that you are responsible for the costs of the Azure resources running in that subscription. Most, if not all, of Azure is paid on a kind of pay-as-you-go or per usage basis. So, for example, some of those meters could range from per device to per message to amount of storage used. I'll give you a specific example with the IoT Central application that Steve showed you. Because IoT Central is pitched more as a software as a service model, we have a very simplified, predictable pricing model behind that, which is just per device. So there are two different SKUs depending on how many devices you have or how often those devices are sending data. But basically, you will be charged on a per device per month basis for IoT Central. And that's an all-in cost for all of the resources that we deploy as part of that IoT Central application.
Got it. Thank you. And you may have noticed when Steve was clicking through the setup, there's a 7-day free trial for IoT Central, which is what a lot of folks use to get started. So it just makes it super easy to
yeah,
get going with the
and
kit.
and I think just to be transparent, I mean, a lot of people will do that free trial, but honestly, you saw that the app that I demonstrated had 25 devices. I think we've tailored the frequency of the reporting to keep that bill low, so it's like $20 or something a month. It's pretty modest to do a pilot with IoT Central, and you can tune it if you really don't want it to go very high.
Very modest. Another question came in about how the Swift or the Rigado system handles multiple gateways in one location.
Yeah,
talk about that.
Yeah, so we obviously support that case with Swift. We've enabled people to add more gateways. It can be in multiple sites or in one location. Most of the time, the sensors, the beacons will just work and they'll talk to the nearest gateway that they see. So I actually had this running in my house. I have a gateway here in the basement, one upstairs on the 3rd floor. So that's kind of a proxy for a modest size space, although one gateway would cover my whole house. But in the case where you have 2 gateways, the beacons will just talk to the closest one, and the data will show up in IoT Central either way. There are some cases where, like the screens, they really only want to talk to one gateway, and so we like to have a gateway sort of take ownership of a display so that you're not getting 2 gateways trying to tell it what to do. But that's something that also we can handle. So yeah, in a lot of our deployments, if people are concerned about coverage and they want to add additional gateways, we can do some back-end orchestration to handle that.
Got it. I like that every question we learn a little bit more about the Garetta child monitoring system. So gotcha. There's a gateway upstairs. Got it. When you were talking about the digital twins overview, Matt, so there's a lot of layers to that, and I wonder, could you kind of talk about where people tend to start their digital twins journey?
Sure. Yeah, I'd say people often start with digital twins because they need to understand the relationship between devices in space. So the evolution of our own digital twins product really started because we saw partners like Steelcase and others who wanted to know what a device meant in the context of a space. And for IoT, for a long time, it was just all about devices only and only about getting devices to the cloud. And so we started realizing that you needed to bridge the gap between people, places, and devices and understand the relationship between them to enable a connected ecosystem. Mm-hmm. So the 3 pillars we normally see in a smart building that digital twins can enable range from anything from energy optimization or operations, so understanding how energy is being used in your space, understand how you can manage the work orders and context of that space. Then there's around space utilization. So for a long time, that was how do I fit people into less space and how do I maximize my space utilization? Obviously, now it's kind of flipped itself on its head, where now you actually want to make sure you have enough space per person to keep that distance and keep in compliance. And then lastly is around the people in the space, the productivity, the experience you give to your tenants or to your visitors or to your employees to help them feel more productive, safer, healthier, and so on. But all of those underneath are really empowered by the fact that you are bringing together the context between the devices in your space. So it could be your building management system, it could be Rigado sensors, it could be any other bespoke sensor that you want to add into that ecosystem. Then you can bring in your spatial aspect, things like your building information models, your floor plans, your maps, which I know that Rigado has also been looking at both for the installation side as well as some of the experience. And then lastly is then bringing other external sources of data to help kind of bridge the gap with other lines of business that you might be applying it to, whether that be Dynamics for field service, it could be your CRM, it could be any other tool that you might want to add to it. Digital twins becomes that integration layer between all those solutions.
Got it. Thank you. And just, thank you, Steve. Clarifying question. We had a question about that $20 a month-ish pricing. And that's for all the devices. Everything that goes into the Garetta child monitoring system is only $20. So we need a special version of the kit just for the Garetta house. And this may be the last question, but someone asked about the installation time. So you've shown the sort of the out-of-box experience, and we talked about some use cases, but maybe talk a little bit about what someone might expect from ordering the kit to actually having things up and running.
Yeah, and I'll answer it along with another one I saw in there about battery, when does battery need to be replaced? So typically you'll get, in your kit, you'll get whatever sensors you ordered. So if you get the little occupancy sensor or the buttons, they might have a little tab that you pull and that activates the battery. So that'll start the process of it talking to the gateway. And literally that's all you do. Once you pull that tab, assuming you've set up the gateway and gone through the wizard, you'll just see it in that device list. To activate the button, you push the button for 6 seconds and it'll come online. So all of them have little tabs that you pull and that will activate them. And then from there, typically it's a 2 to 3 year battery life. Some of them go 3 to 5 years, some a little less. It kind of varies, and we've laid that all out in the knowledge base to kind of give you an indicator of what the battery life is. And most of them in IoT Central, you'll see battery listed. The battery life is indicated there, so that you can actually see if the battery is going down, and when it's getting low, you could create an alert on that. When the battery is below a certain threshold, send me an alert. We haven't had that come up very much because these batteries last 3 years. So 3 years from now, keep me honest on this when the battery gets low. But yeah, I mean, these are intended to last a very, very long time. Only in the cases where you're having them beacon really, really frequently or doing something, kind of special with them, will you have to replace them more than, once a year, once every other year.
Yeah.
And I think I'll just jump on that too and just emphasize that I think Rigado's done a great job of providing that integration with IoT Central to accelerate the time to results with solution development, because you're not buying devices for the sake of devices, you're buying them to integrate into the solution you want to offer to your own line of business or to your customers. And so I think Rigado's done a lot of great work to make sure that out-of-box experience you get with IoT Central is configured to handle a lot of those common and general scenarios that you'd see across the board, but also providing that extensibility to tailor that experience to wherever you bring your unique experience and your unique domain knowledge to customize the experience to what you need to offer.
Great, thank you. I think that's it for questions. So I think we're done. Great job. Right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everybody, for joining. And we'll have the recording available later today. And let us know if you have any additional questions.
Thanks. And thank you, Matt, for joining.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much, Matt. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.